Hey there, sexy techies.
Hey, everybody. Episode 16 coming at you with some pretty bonkers tech news.
Oh, bonkers.
Yeah. That's what the cool kids are saying these days.
Oh, I don't know if you are the judge of that.
So we don't usually do like typical tech news stuff on our podcast. Partially, I think, because I'm a techie and I find a lot of that stuff kind of boring when I listen to it on other tech news podcasts, just because like they go into a lot of details that like nobody really needs to know.
Oh, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. So we're not going to do that. I'm going to try not to bore people with details, but there's two stories this week that I think people will find interesting. The first one is really just kind of fascinating, and it's something that I think people will be excited about.
Okay.
And the second one is just like ridiculous. It's like something out of a movie, and it'll probably turn into a movie eventually.
Oh, okay. Ooh, what do I want to...
We're going to start with the first one that I mentioned.
Oh, I don't have a choice.
Yeah, no. I almost gave you a choice, but I decided, no. I wanted them to go in this order.
What are you, the producer?
This is my segment. So the first one, some major news out of Apple this past week. And it has to do with those blue and green bubbles that you see in your text messages.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
because I'm an iPhone user.
Yeah, so
You're not.
that's right. So I was going to get to that. So May is an iPhone user, and you always have, like, you've never owned an Android, right?
No, I went straight from BlackBerry to iPhone.
Okay, yeah, and I've only ever owned Android smartphones. I've never owned an iPhone. So you're going to get two sides here. This isn't like a Apple versus Android war here. We'll do that maybe some other episode. Although there's a little bit of, you might sense a little bit of it in my voice as I describe some of this.
No, I already know what's going on.
Okay. So why don't you explain to me and the listeners, because I don't have these blue and green bubbles on my side.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about them.
So when you are texting from an iPhone and you are texting other iPhone users or just another iPhone user, you get blue bubbles because that indicates that you are using iMessenger or iMessage.
Yep, iMessage.
And that you are capable of sending safe texts to each other, safe encrypted texts, and that you can send media and reactions. And there's just like this whole world of texting that iMessage creates. Now, when you have a non-iPhone user or a non-iMessage user in the group chat, or if you're just texting, an Android user from an iPhone, it is a green bubble because that indicates to the iPhone user that it might take longer to send media. If you are not connected to, I forget, like your data or your internet, I forget what it is, that it might not send. So you have to be connected in a different way. And that is the difference.
Okay. So, and what happens, like, what are some of the side effects of when you've got these green bubbles?
Yeah, so what's really annoying about Android users on your group chat, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Is that when somebody sends media, which actually just happened to me today, I put together this really nice video montage of something of the group of friends that we were hanging out with the other night. And because apparently my love language is putting together video montages, and I sent it in this group chat, and there's one person in there, and she's notorious for having a personal Droid phone, but she has a work iPhone, I found out later, so I should have sent it to her work phone. Anyway, so it sent it, but it was completely compressed. So when I see it on my phone, it used to not be this way, but it used to be that everybody got this teeny tiny, like, I don't even know what you would call it.
Yeah, low res, pixelated.
Super pixelated.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't even like tell whose faces are whose.
Right. It looks like it was taken on a Motorola Razr phone from 2000
or not even
5 or whatever.
Yeah, not even that. Like what the very first digital camera that ever came out.
Okay.
And then so that's one of the annoying things. Another one is that because iMessage supports reaction buttons, if somebody sends an image, people can, instead of like responding, I like that or I love it, they could just hit like the thumbs up or the heart button. And then, everyone would just see like this little heart icon next to the picture. However, if you are in a group chat with a Droid user, it will show up as so-and-so loved an image.
Yeah. I see those. I get those because I don't get the hearts.
Okay.
I just get the May loved an image or something. So like sometimes if I'm going to, since I can't heart something, I'll just write back, Tony liked an image.
Yeah. That was a running joke. Actually, it was in your family's group chat with just the women, and your mom was the only Android user in that group chat.
Go mom.
And no, because somebody sent a picture, and then every text after was so-and-so loved an image, so-and-so loved an image, so-and-so loved an image. And so I just texted back, May thought an image was just okay. But yeah, so, I mean, and that's just, a small portion of just kind of the annoyance of having, the green user instead of the blue.
Yeah. So it's not really about the color of the bubbles, right? It's just like that's an indicator that your messages aren't going to look the way that they're supposed to.
Right. Or that you can't send something in a certain way. Like
right.
You have to
can't use all the features that you should be able to.
Or more so just like the connectivity.
So hopefully with this episode, I can clear up some of this, I don't know, misplaced like anger or snark that I sense from some iPhone users out there when they are in a chat conversation with Android users. Because I see, in the messages, it's like, oh, there's an Android user on here, isn't there? Something like that. And so the news that's come out is that Apple has finally agreed to do something that they've resisted doing for years. And I think it's going to have a positive impact for everybody, Android and Apple users alike, with the exception maybe of Apple itself and like the company's bottom line. But we'll talk about that. So they're going to do something about what you described as like the kind of the shitty state of text message communications across platforms between Apple and Android devices, or iOS and Android devices. So we're going to do just like a very quick history lesson here on some of the basics of like text messaging protocols. And this is the part I really don't want to get too much in the weeds with because it gets kind of boring. But everyone's heard of SMS, right? It stands for Short Message Service. It's a messaging protocol that was conceptualized in 1984, way back in the 80s, and first used in the 90s, in like the early 90s. So SMS messages are limited to 160 characters, and they have no support for media. So MMS, or Multimedia Messaging Service, was incorporated to handle media communications. That was commercialized in the early 2000s. It's also severely limited in size and encryption. So not great protocols here and very outdated, but it's what has been used for sending text messages basically throughout the history of mobile phones. Both SMS and MMS are sent over the mobile carrier network, so not via data, like not via your data plan. And so the mobile carriers impose a strict limitation on the file size. Depending on the carrier, it's somewhere between like 1 and 3 megabytes, because they don't want to clog up their network with all this traffic. So they severely compress these files to make them small enough to fit, or they just have a limitation that says you can't send that file, right? It's too big.
Are GIFs bigger than that?
They can be. So GIFs are also limited. I mean, that's considered media, essentially. So Apple developed iMessage, which launched in 2011, which is a proprietary messaging protocol for Apple devices. And you described some of this, but when an iPhone user sends a text message to an Android user, or vice versa, or you have a group of users. You could have even like 20 iPhone users and one Android user, right? What you'll notice is you'll get those green bubbles for the Android users if you're on an iPhone. And regardless of what side you're on, you'll notice that any photos or videos that you send will be pixelated, will look small, and really just the experience is pretty terrible. Like the quality is degraded. You really can't see what's going on.
Is that because it reverts back to MMS?
It does. So if an iOS device and an Android device are in the same conversation, it can't send via iMessage.
Right.
So it resorts to MMS.
Okay.
And as recently as last year at the 2022 Code Conference, Apple CEO Tim Cook said, when asked about this issue of sharing messages, and a user said, when I communicate with my mom, I like to be able to show her videos, and she sends me videos, and the quality's terrible. We can't even really communicate with each other over text message.
Right.
And Tim Cook said, I don't hear our users asking that we put a lot of energy into that. And he said, kind of half jokingly, but not really. He said his suggestion was buy your mom an iPhone, basically.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's
maybe.
marketing.
So maybe. I mean, it just depends on your stance. So that all changed this past week when Apple announced that it will introduce support for RCS by late 2024. So RCS is the Rich Communication Services, a new protocol, sort of like the next generation for sending SMS and MMS messages.
And that's not proprietary to Apple. That's like a new way of texting.
Yeah, it's like an open protocol. It's not proprietary. Apple is agreeing sort of begrudgingly to sort of take part in this. But it will do some things that are kind of long overdue. So it will have support for features like read receipts, typing indicators, those little bubbles when someone's typing, high resolution videos and images, and end-to-end encryption. So all the good stuff that's missing right now between Android and iPhone and what you're used to on iMessage, really.
Yeah.
One drawback is you do need a data plan to send these messages. So you do need to, or you need to have access to data. So you need Wi-Fi or you need a data plan because they can't be sent over mobile carrier's connection. So SMS and MMS would still be used as like sort of a fail-safe in case you didn't have that connection. Then it would have to send it as an MMS file to get the video through or the image through.
Yeah, that's what's helpful for me when I see like green versus blue. Like I know that I either have to connect to a Wi-Fi, connection in order to send something if I know that it's going to be sent green.
Right. So you as an iPhone user can have a green bubble if you don't have a Wi-Fi connection or a data connection?
Correct.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah, that makes sense because I'm guessing iMessage also needs Wi-Fi, right? Or a data connection to be able to send. It can't be sent via the mobile carrier network.
Right.
All right. So why hasn't Apple wanted to support RCS in the past? One, I think the real reason is lock-in is good for business, right? Like they have this proprietary platform. They know that it helps them gain users because there's almost like the status thing to being blue, right? To having your bubble be blue. And also it helps them not lose users. Like people don't want to switch to Android and be the one person who makes the message conversation bad, right? And so why is this changing now? Like all of a sudden, like a year after Tim Cook said, no way, like get your grandma or get your mom an iPhone. Well, it's really the same reason that Apple decided to change from its proprietary lightning cables to USB-C. So you know how like your iPhone still has a lightning cable, I think, right?
Yeah, it's a different charger.
Yeah. So the newest iPhone devices have a USB-C connection, which is the same as all the new Android devices.
Right.
And new iPads also. Like my iPad has a USB-C connection. So the benefits of USB-C, it's faster, both charging and data transfer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But the reason that's not the reason that Apple changed. Like it had been faster for a while and it was available. Apple made that change because the European Union came up with a new regulation requiring manufacturers to manufacture their new devices with USB-C, arguing that it would reduce electronic waste and save money for consumers.
Right.
Apple didn't like it, but they went along with it because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to sell their devices in the EU. Same with this change to supporting the RCS for messaging. There's this EU regulation, the Digital Markets and Services Act. It requires that gatekeepers not limit interoperability with other systems for their core services. And so there's, some are making an argument that messaging is a core service. Apple is definitely, considered one of these gatekeepers because they have this platform. Apple is pushing back on the core services thing, saying like it's not a core service. But they that is the reason that they've decided to comply with this, or that they've decided to adopt this RCS protocol. I guess that leads to the question, does this mean the end for the green bubbles on the iPhone? And as far as I can tell, the answer to that question is no. So Apple has stated that they're still going to have iMessage on their devices, and communication between iPhones or Apple devices will be still through iMessage. And what it seems like, and they haven't been fully transparent yet about how this is going to work. Like some people are speculating, are there going to be two different messaging apps? One that you have to use, that comes preloaded. You have to use that if you're going to be, messaging with Android users, or this other that's just still iMessage. I hope it's not that. I hope that it almost like it right now, it defaults to MMS if there's an Android on it. I think it will default to RCS if there's an Android on it, and it'll be the same experience for an iPhone user either way.
Right.
So, I think that's fine. Like they're still going to have that distinction of the blue and the green bubble.
Yeah.
But this is just a better experience for everybody.
Yeah.
For Apple users and Android users, and to me the statement that I found most sort of egregious was when Tim Cook said, like, we don't hear our users asking for this. I don't know what users he could have been talking to, because like it seems like it's the biggest complaint of iPhone users that I've heard is like, oh, every time I'm on a conversation with an Android user, all of our message. And it goes both ways.
Right.
Like the Android users don't like it either.
Yeah.
So this seems like a good thing. It may not be a good thing for business because, there was a reason that Apple was opposed to making this change for so long.
Yeah.
They may end up losing some customers over this because they're like, oh, now I can, buy a phone that's half as expensive and still get the same, quality experience out of messaging. Or, I know people who have left Android and gone to Apple because they didn't want to be that person who made the text message, conversation poor. Because in the U.S., iPhone and iOS has a 58% to 42% lead in market share. So a little, the majority of users in the US are on iOS. That's not the same globally. So Android globally has about 70%, of the market share. But I feel like among our friend group, it's more like 90-10 or something like that, iPhone to Android.
Right.
So I hear about it a lot, and I think a lot of iPhone users are, will go several conversations with only iPhones, and then all of a sudden there will be an Android in there, and they'll be like, oh, again?
Honestly, that's why I think Tim Cook was saying that he doesn't hear it very often, because for the most part, people are messaging just fine, but then when it happens, you hear it louder, but it's not necessarily you hear more of it. You just hear a louder complaint because it's not something that they're used to.
Yeah, but when it's 58 to 42%, that's not an overwhelming majority. It's still almost half the population has Android devices.
I do wonder, like, generationally what that is, though, because, or, it might be even like a subset class of, I don't know. Like, there could be Droid users that, like, are part of a population that majority iPhone users don't.
It could be. All I know is that, this is something that happens to me at least a few times a month, where I'm on a conversation with iPhone users, and someone will send a video, or especially it happens with a group of images too, because if there's a bunch of images, it has to degrade the quality more.
Yeah.
And they're worthless at that point. And then you have to switch to WhatsApp, or you have to switch to some other messaging service that will send over Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And so that the quality will not degrade. So I think this will be a good thing.
Yeah. I also think that maybe he doesn't hear a lot of it because people have figured out different apps like WhatsApp and, Telegram or whatever, and can...
So you prefer to take him at his word. I prefer to take his statement as meaning we don't want to focus on this right now because it's not in our best interest as a business, which is fine. I mean, they're a business. They have the right to do that.
Yeah.
But to say that your users are not impacted by this, or like there's no frustration around it, just seems kind of disingenuous to me.
That's an opinion. Well, can I just say one other thing?
Yeah,
though,
please.
So I know that there's also a little bit of humph around the fact that there's still the blue and green differentiation. Even
I don't care about that. I mean,
I have heard the argument though that some people think that it's still this elitist culture of iMessage or iPhone users wanting to still be oh, we're the blue, message, or we're the blue color. And,
yeah, I can see that.
but there is still a lot of functionality that iMessage can do that RCS doesn't support. There's little it's not even just the reaction thing. It's you can, gosh, I forget what it's called. It's you can make your message more dynamic by echoing it when it sends, or sending something with balloon and confetti, or you can even just draw a picture, or send an invisible message. Those are all things that you can do. Not a lot of people utilize it a lot, but to know that you have that capability because your messages are coming up as blue lets me know that I can do that, in this text chain. But if it's green, then I know that oh, I can't send that dynamic text or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think the good thing is now that the major manufacturers are agreeing to use a common standard, they can build features like that into this common standard and know that everybody will be able to use them.
Yeah.
So you won't have one player in the space that has, over half of the market share, sort of refusing to play nice with the others and say, we're going to develop these features for our users. But because it just doesn't make sense to me that you would want your users to have a poor experience with other, because they are communicating with other users that aren't on their platform. So you're saying we're okay with you having a poor experience with those other users because we're optimizing for the experience you have only with other users on our platform. Okay, everyone, you're probably wondering why podcasters are always hit the subscribe button, means a lot. We'd really appreciate it. So if you don't know, more subscribers means more listeners to the podcast. Each episode, it's more likely that you're going to download a future episode. Also, in the charts, that helps a podcast to grow, to get more listeners, to be presented in front of a larger audience. Only about half, or even less than half, of the people who listen to the podcast each week are subscribed. So hit that subscribe button or that follow button. It will help the podcast to get more attention. It will help make sure that we keep giving it the attention that it needs to create a quality podcast that you all will hopefully continue to love. So hit that button. That's all we'll ask. Okay, moving on to the next story. This one is not going to be as tense between us as the last one. I think there was a little bit of some pent up anger between the two sides here.
I'm sorry you felt that way.
Okay. So this one's related to OpenAI. And if you haven't heard about this story at all over the past week, I don't know, either our algorithms are just so different or you're living under a rock. Have you heard anything about this outside of me telling you about what's going on at OpenAI?
No, but did you know the Trolls movie just came out?
No, okay. No, I didn't. So, all right, good.
So
because
now tell me about it.
No, that's good, because to me, it seems like this is all anybody has been talking about for the past 4 days, and I'm glad to know that that's not necessarily the case. So OpenAI is the company behind ChatGPT.
Right.
So we discussed ChatGPT in, I think it was episode 6 of our podcast.
Yeah.
So the co-founder and CEO of OpenAI was Sam Altman.
Oh, yeah.
Also the former president of Y Combinator.
Right. I know that name.
Okay, yeah. So, very successful founder and CEO of OpenAI. OpenAI has sort of really flourished under Sam Altman's leadership. Well respected and well liked by his colleagues. A very popular CEO.
I feel like, did you meet him when you were in YC?
I ran into him. He wasn't very involved. I think he was already sort of moving on when I was there.
Okay.
But he was still there. So the board of OpenAI announced on Friday afternoon that they had fired Sam Altman.
The board fired Sam Altman?
Yeah, just out of the blue, there was an announcement, and it said, this is part of the announcement, it said, Mr. Altman's departure follows a deliberative review process by the board, which concluded that he was not consistently candid in his communication with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. The board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI.
So he kept a secret? Is that what that means?
Nobody really knows what it means. So they haven't commented on what it means outside of that post. And that was Friday. Today we're recording this on Monday. And they have had ample opportunity to, and we'll go through some of this. No reason was given outside of this. So the board consisted of Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, who was the president of OpenAI and a co-founder, Ilya Sutskever, I think I'm saying that right, and then 3 non-OpenAI employees, who we're not going to get into because it's too confusing. So Ilya and the 3 non-employees voted to fire Sam and kick Greg off the board. And I think it's very notable, like the way that they did this and like the words that they chose in their statement, because usually if a board is going to fire a CEO, their statement is going to be, the CEO's leaving to pursue other projects or like spend more time with their family or, something like that.
Yeah, all those like cliche.
Yeah. Not something like this was a really kind of a nasty way to say that he's leaving the company.
Yeah. I mean, it was very like they were like putting blame on him for something, which is not a very like amenable separation.
I agree. And if you're going to do that, you've got to explain what it is, because it led to a lot of people, at first when this happened, it was like, what did Sam do, basically?
Right. It loses a lot of trust.
Yeah, definitely. And so the board named Mira Murati, who was the CTO, as the interim CEO in that same post. So they named her as the interim CEO. Right after that announcement went out, Sam tweeted, "I love my time at OpenAI. It was transformative for me personally and hopefully the world a little bit. Most of all, I loved working with such talented people. We'll have more to say about what's next later."
Very positive, it sounds.
Yeah, well, I mean, so we found out he was taken aback. Like, he was very surprised that this happened. He didn't know, like, he was called into a meeting and didn't know that this was coming.
Interesting.
So Greg Brockman, who I mentioned, was another board member and co-founder and president of OpenAI. He actually resigned in solidarity. So he said, peace out, I'm leaving too.
Yeah.
Microsoft, who is OpenAI's biggest partner, and they've committed to investing at least $13 billion in OpenAI, they didn't even get any advance notice. Like, they found out about this thing when we all did, basically.
Yeah, when this statement came out.
Yeah, exactly. I think, maybe they were given a minute's notice. Like, hey, we're sending out this statement, by the way. Like, so...
It sounds like it happened really fast.
Yeah, and without much thought is the way it comes across. I'm sure there was thought put into this huge decision, but like maybe just not the right kind of thought or from the right... I don't know. Like, nobody knows right now what's going on. And so there's, there was a lot of speculation as to the reasons. Like, was this, at first it was like, what could this be? It was like, this has to be something pretty big for them to abruptly fire him.
Yeah. Do you have any speculation? Should we speculate?
I don't want to speculate. I mean, I will share what some of the speculation is now.
Okay.
After the initial, like, oh, is there some sort of scandal? Like, is there some sort of like, was there some sort of malfeasance, right? Like, it was wrongdoing by Sam Altman. The speculation now is, maybe Sam was moving too fast with commercializing ChatGPT than the board was comfortable with. Some of the other board members are more in the camp of like, we need to slow this down. There's a lot of concerns around safety with ChatGPT and AI and all that sort of stuff. And Sam maybe was sort of moving ahead too fast with commercializing, getting it out there. They actually had to pause subscriptions to ChatGPT Plus last week, just a couple days before this. They announced this because they had way too many subscriptions, like too many people signed up, and they needed to pump the brakes a little bit, they said. So after this happened, the investors, Microsoft, other investors, employees, and the general public, like if you were on Threads at the time that this happened, like this was the first big tech event that like you really saw how many people on Threads are interested in technology because everybody was posting about this. So the employees of OpenAI called on the board to bring Sam back.
Oh, okay.
Around the same time, there was news that came out of OpenAI that there was no malfeasance, no wrongdoing of any kind on Sam's part. This was really just some sort of disagreement, like some sort of business disagreement.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that he got to clear his name that way.
Yeah, it happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have had to have happened. Like, there should have been more detail about this. Like, that was entirely the wrong way to go about, firing someone like this.
Yeah.
And so Mira Murati, the interim CEO, she comes out on Team Sam. So
oh, okay.
Yeah, so she's like, basically, I don't want that job. I'm with Sam.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So on Sunday, Sam was back at OpenAI. He actually tweeted a picture of him with a guest, like a visitor badge of OpenAI, and he said, "This is the first and last time I'm ever gonna wear one of these."
Oh, wow.
Like, a visitor inside his own company.
Right.
So for a moment or two on Sunday, it seemed like the board was interested in bringing Sam back. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was sort of mediating the discussions between Sam and Greg and then in the board. And it seemed like Sam and Greg were open to the idea of returning to OpenAI, but they, and this is all sort of speculation or what's come out of news reports, they were requiring that the 4 board members who pushed them out resign.
Oh, wow.
And accept the appointment of 4 new board members. They're like, we're not going back to work for you, you clowns that just like created this whole spectacle.
Wow. So it's like a us versus them thing. Like you can't have all of them. You have to choose.
Well, sort of. It's up to the board though at this point, right? Like, are they willing to accept those terms? And Monday morning, news comes out that the board did not bring back Sam Altman.
Wow.
Instead, they named a new interim CEO because, Mira is Team Sam.
Yeah.
She can't be the interim CEO. And it's a familiar name to the podcast, one Emmett Shear.
Oh, wait. Emmett, he, Justin TV.
Keep going. You're going to get there.
Twitch.
Yes. Okay. So Emmett was the co-founder of Justin TV and Twitch, and longtime CEO of Twitch, who just retired maybe 6 months ago or so at this point.
Yeah.
So Emmett is brought on board. He tweets at like 1 a.m. this morning, this sort of like intro tweet, and says, part of his tweet, he says he's going to hire a firm to conduct an unbiased investigation into this whole situation and like what happened. So like, we don't even know if Emmett really knows what happened, like why Sam was forced out of the company.
I need like a web. I need a diagram. Like, so who's he friends with?
Well, he's a Y Combinator founder, and Sam is a Y Combinator founder, and the former president of Y. They were actually, I think, in Y Combinator at the same time. Right,
with their different companies.
Yeah. Then later this morning, after 1 a.m.
This is coming down to the minute.
Microsoft announces that they are hiring Sam and Greg and some of their colleagues to lead a new advanced AI research team at Microsoft. Sam is going to be CEO of this team. So like that implies, they are going to be their own segment in Microsoft, like their own section of the company. And this is where it just sort of veers off course. Like, so employees apparently responded to the internal announcement on Slack of the hiring of Emmett Shear at OpenAI with an FU emoji.
Oh.
So, and I mean, they were upset, rightly so, right? Like none of them know why this happened still.
Right.
Apparently they didn't get any more details than we did.
Yeah.
And so there's about 750 employees at OpenAI. As of right now, we're recording this 9:00 p.m. on Monday. Nearly all of those 750 employees have signed a letter to the board asking them to bring back Sam and Greg and resign or lose all of them to the new Microsoft project.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Is there a hashtag I stand with Sam?
I don't know if there's a hashtag, but like, so Sam tweeted one of his tweets over the weekend. Like every OpenAI employee quote tweeted it or retweeted it with a heart emoji. So I think that was their version of showing their support.
Yeah, crazy.
So now this is just a segment from their letter to the board, which like this is amazing. It says, "Your actions have made it obvious that you are incapable of overseeing OpenAI. We are unable to work for or with people who lack competence, judgment, and care for our mission and employees. We, the undersigned, may choose to resign from OpenAI and join the newly announced Microsoft subsidiary run by Sam Altman and Greg Brockman. Microsoft has assured us there are positions for all OpenAI employees. We will take this step imminently unless all current board members resign and reinstate Sam Altman and Greg Brockman."
Wow.
Can you imagine writing that to your board? Like, how pissed off must this group of employees be?
Can you imagine reading that? Sorry.
Being a board member and getting that?
I always like think about people's feelings.
Yes, but they made their bed. Like, I mean...
We think. We don't know.
Well, no, we know this announcement that they put out, and we know that they haven't defended it with any concrete reason why they got rid of Sam Altman.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
And we're not done yet. Like, this is... So, after this...
Did something happened 5 minutes ago?
Probably. Like, there's probably something happened. That's why by the time that this gets published on Wednesday, it's going to be outdated. I'm sure there'll be more stuff that has happened. But, so, Ilya apologizes on Twitter.
Okay.
He says he didn't mean to cause any harm to OpenAI. He apologizes for siding with the other board members, and he flips to Team Sam.
Whoa.
And signs this letter.
What?
So he is one of the undersigned in this letter to the board members, to the other 3 board members.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, really, it was to himself and the other 3 board members.
So okay. So does that then mean he is in agreement that he should resign from the board?
No, I think he is apologizing and trying to make amends and saying, like, now I'm on Team Sam.
So he's trying to gain immunity from resigning if Sam comes back. Maybe.
Yeah, I think he still wants to work at OpenAI, and he's saying he made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't have any other communication from the board. I mentioned this a few times, but we don't know why Sam was fired. This is, like, the most ridiculous story that could, like... Eventually, we're going to have to find out, right?
Yeah.
Like, what happened here.
Yeah. The Netflix docuseries will tell us.
I hope before that. So, do you want to hear my, like, speculation as to what's happening right now?
Yes.
And this likely will be proven incorrect by tomorrow, before this episode even airs.
Yes, but spill the tea. Spill your tea.
So, and this is, not I'm not speculating as to the reason this happened. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But, like, I think that this whole, like, Microsoft hiring Sam and Greg thing is a ploy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really think that Sam Altman wants to be a Microsoft employee. It just doesn't seem like, even though he would, have his own division, like, I don't know, that just doesn't seem like something he would want to do. What I think may be happening is this was the plan, right? Like, hey, all right, you're not bringing him back. We're taking him, and we're taking all your employees.
Right.
And then what are you left with? Right? And so I think this is another method of trying to force the board's hand to resign and, let Sam and Greg and, all the employees come back.
Right.
Because really they'll have nothing.
Yeah.
Like Microsoft could legitimately hire these 750 people and basically just do an OpenAI internally at Microsoft.
Yeah.
And yes, OpenAI has all this tech and stuff like that, this IP, but like it can be recreated.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my sort of wonky prediction of how this ends up. Maybe Sam ends up going back. This board resigns. They restructure. They're going to have to restructure OpenAI because the board. I really don't want to get into the unique inner workings of like this board, but like it's a nonprofit board that oversees a for-profit company,
Right.
And this is just not the way that boards should work.
Right.
Like boards fire their CEOs all the time. That's
Right.
fine. But like not when they're doing a great job for the company.
Yeah.
Like they're doing what they set out to do, right? He's going to make his shareholders money for the for-profit portion, it seems, right? I mean, they are the leader of the pack. Like they are head and shoulders above the competitors when it comes to AGI and like with ChatGPT. So it just is really mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yeah, it speaks volumes about a company, though, to see all of the employees, backing their leader. I think that's a good
I agree.
sign.
I mean, yeah, I think it says a lot about Sam and the culture at OpenAI.
Yeah.
So we'll see where this goes. Like, there's more to this story. There's probably something else happened while we were recording, but I'm interested to see where it goes.
Okay, so let's shift to a more like inspiring story.
I could use it.
Yeah.
Inspire me.
Okay, so last month I heard a pretty inspiring story where a company identified a problem for a specific population and created something so helpful and incredibly inclusive that it really like kind of pulled at my heartstrings a little bit.
All right, let's hear it.
So are you familiar with Gallaudet University?
Are they in DC? I've heard of them, but I don't really know anything about them.
Yeah, so they are a bilingual college that utilizes American Sign Language, ASL,
Okay.
and English, so bilingual, to ensure the intellectual and professional advancement of deaf and hard of hearing individuals.
Okay.
So, a lot of students at their school use ASL, but they're run like any other, college with athletic department and, all different departments. So they noticed that there was a challenge with their football team, and that was communication in coaching. So their coach was quoted saying, we work out the same way as every other college football program. We practice the same way. We compete the same way. The difference between coaching a hearing team compared to a deaf team is first the communication. So during games, when you're a hearing team, your plays are usually called out from the sidelines, and then, the quarterback, I am not that great with sports, but the quarterback, does a little flea flicker, like call in the huddle, and then, they all clap and then go their separate ways. So, but because Gallaudet University, their team primarily communicated using ASL, they played some teams that ended up like stealing plays, or it was a little too easy to know what their plays were, or it was a hindrance for the team on the field to like always have to be looking, for like the ASL signs.
Yeah, because normally like the quarterback will get the play from the sideline, and then in the huddle he'll explain it to the other players.
Right.
But if he can't talk to them, or I'm sure the mask is hindering their ability to read his lips and that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, or to like even see, because when you're in a huddle, I've been in a huddle before.
Like how you raised your hand.
Raise your hand if you've been in a huddle. And I'm short, so, and sometimes I can't like see over the people in the huddle, but I can still hear. And so if you can't see, the ASL sign language,
right?
So it could be hard. So what they partnered with AT&T, who jumped at the opportunity to use their 5G technology and make the game of football more inclusive. So AT&T partnered with them to design a helmet that allows coaches on the sidelines to essentially like select plays from their tablet, and it will send the play to a lens inside the helmet of the quarterback. And then, the quarterback will receive the play in AR, augmented reality,
Okay.
on like a digital display, located like on the visor of the helmet. So AT&T 5G provides like the reliability and like low latency for plays to be sent and received at a speed that keeps up with the pace of the game. So
Very cool.
It really is a game changer because it's almost like instant that they can get that communication instead of like having to wait for, things to be spelled out or whatever.
Yeah.
It's awesome. This technology, there's this gap for deaf and hard of hearing athletes that this technology is able to kind of like bridge. And it really does make football more inclusive. It can also apparently reduce miscommunication and unwarranted penalties, according to the organizations. So, now they're thinking that the application for, 5G connected helmets can reach beyond college football. And, it opens a whole bunch of possibilities of inclusion for any sport, really, that requires helmets. So I just think it's really cool that like AT&T knew that they had this strength with their like 5G technology, and they were able to utilize like, that speed to help with Gallaudet's like legacy of breaking down barriers to make this helmet.
Yeah, it's a cool application of the technology.
Like the possibilities are endless now. I wonder what the next thing's going to be. All right, I'm excited about this one. It's time for our Hot Mom of the Week.
Yeah, whoa, last time I checked, I'm still hot, real hot.
So this content creator, her name is Jessica Kellgren-Fozzard, and she is a British YouTuber, most known for her content on disability awareness, LGBTQIA plus history, and vintage fashion. So she's kind of this mixed bag.
Okay, I'm like thinking that processing in my head.
Right, you're like, I know, and when you kind of like read it, you're like, well, none of that stuff really goes together, but she does a wonderful job just putting it all together out there. And we talked about the athletes at Gallaudet University and how it was a little bit difficult for them as deaf athletes to play football, but now, they were able to bridge that gap. So I was just thinking about, who's like a cool like content creator out there that is an advocate for the deaf community, is deaf herself. And I came across Jessica, and her content is really cool. So just a little bit about her. So I mentioned she's British, so like she has a really cool accent, like to start off with.
That's like bonus points, just like before you even start right there.
It doesn't even matter who you are. It's like, oh, you're British, cool, you're cool. So due to several of her disabilities that she has, she is deaf and also blind in one eye, and she was just recently diagnosed with ADHD. And like in one of her recent posts, this is what kind of got me interested in her. She talked about how signing sometimes helps with her stimming relief. Are you familiar with stimming?
No.
Okay, so stimming is like this self-stimulation movement, or sometimes it's like a vocal repetition that helps neurodivergent folks self-regulate or self-soothe.
Okay.
So, sometimes you would see people kind of like if they need like fidget spinners to kind of calm down.
Got it.
But you'll see that like sometimes she, with her ADHD, she'll sign to kind of help self-regulate herself. So her content is really informative and just very matter of fact without sounding condescending. And I don't know, maybe it's because she's British and she has a very soft voice, but
I've heard British people sound condescending.
Okay,
so.
well, she doesn't. So she's also part of the LGBTQIA plus community, as I had said, and she lives in Brighton with her wife Claudia. And in 2021, they announced that they were pregnant. And that summer, her son Rupert was born. And I just
love that name.
I know. There's just so much about her.
Bring
that's
back Rupert.
That's adorable.
Okay, yeah.
So that was in 2021. So Rupert is about a little over 2 years old now.
Okay.
And she had another post where she was talking about how difficult it kind of is when she's traveling to a different country, and she kind of looks insensitive when she doesn't understand what the, you know, locals or the shop, you know, people in the stores and stuff are saying to her. And it's not because of, you know, their accent or she can't understand them. It's because she can't hear them.
Right.
And so now, though, Rupert helps her by signing to her. And so now she realizes that, like, oh, you know, it's not because I can't understand you. It's because I'm deaf.
Right. Oh, that's great.
So Rupert's super helpful. And I just, you know, I love seeing her posts pop up. Her vintage fashion is amazing. I just, you know, she has this look, and
I'm looking at her right now. She looks like she's out of a different era.
Yes. Yeah.
She looks like she's from the 50s or something. I don't know what yeah, she just looks very old-fashioned.
Yes. Part of her content is vintage fashion, so she, you know, dresses the part. And when you actually do, like, listen to her, her voice is very calming, and she really is just so informative. So I think it's really cool that she's out there and she exists. And feel free to follow her on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Her handle is Jessica Out of the Closet.
Love it. Well, that's all we've got today. If you enjoyed the episode, hit the subscribe button.
And reach out on social media.
.coms
And Hot Moms.
signing off.